We will call this meeting of the Legislative and Research Committee to order. The attendance been taken?
Yes.
Attendance has been taken. A quorum is present. We need approval of the minutes of February 24th and March 8th. Moved by Michael Smith, Supervisor Smith, second by Supervisor Wright. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Minutes are approved. The first item on today's agenda, those of you who were with us when we met with our legislative delegation in Albany in the spring, they talked about getting information to them earlier during the budget process, the budget preparation process, about our priorities, and we said we would do that. What I have supplied you with today is a copy of our legislative program, which was approved by the board and presented to the legislators from Albany this spring, along with a copy of the Board of Directors resolutions from the NISAC meeting, which took place September 13th through 15th in Onondaga County. The NISAC Board of Directors generally picks out some resolutions from the various committees and puts their name on them because they give them a high priority. And I thought we would also review those resolutions to see if any of those or all of those or some of those would be included. So what I would like to do first, if it's all right with everybody, is go through our legislative program to see if it requires us to include some of these things in our priorities coming into the budget time. And this primarily deals with the putting together of the budget and the input our legislators have directly and indirectly on the state budget, which will come out, I think it's March 1st, maybe. I don't have the date in front of me. But it's usually, no, maybe it's January something. Maybe it's the week after the state of the state. But the more time they have to try and influence some input, the better the chances are. And with our new governor being both a former local government official and a county government official, we have a lot of local government understanding at the highest level. So when the governor's budget comes out, hopefully they'll have some influence. So if we can go through these one at a time and see if we are all in agreement, we'll just vote on them at that time. The first one is to restore full 20% local assistance withholdings. That has really happened, so I don't know that it needs to be included again. That was when some of the CHIPS money and other money was taken from us during the pandemic. Does anybody feel we should include it again?
As long as they don't try it again.
Well, if they try it again, we'll be back in this room having another conversation, but that we won't know. The second is end the mandatory sales tax diversion for state purposes. I think that's very important and that should be included.
I think we need to include that, yeah.
Supervisor Lant has joined the meeting. Good afternoon, sir. I am very well. We're just going through our, what our legislative priorities for the budget coming out of the state will be to send on to our state legislators. We're on item 3 of our original legislative agenda from the spring. The third item is restore VLT aid. Obviously that's been restored, so I don't think that needs to be included.
Chairman, on that number 1, should we just reword it a little bit to say that we want to make sure that it stays in the budget?
We have another item number 5, which is enact no new unfunded mandates legislation, which I think might cover that.
Okay. I was going to say we could reword that. I mean, not to restore, but to make sure that it.
Well, we can certainly put this in our legislative agenda too. The next year's committee can put that in their agenda. Or if it looks like we want to speak out ahead of time before we even put together an agenda, if there is something in the new budget, I tend to, my personal opinion,
That'll go by the
I
wayside.
think we're going to be okay next year because they got enough money from the federal government to carry them comfortably for 2 years.
Okay.
But if something changes, we can certainly revisit it immediately.
Well, I think the legislator wanted this list ahead of time
Yes.
for one going into budget purposes, so it may not hurt just to remind them, even on number 3, they have restored it at this point, but, we could take some of these bullet points and say, look, make sure you're not going to go back and take that 20%. Make sure you're not going after VLT aid.
Well,
That's stuff they need to know we're opposed of before the budget time, right? I mean, are we going to wait till the governor comes out with a budget April 1st and they all of a sudden we've lost VLT aid and we've got to start scrambling to meet with a legislator to get it back in there? Or,
I tend to think that maybe then perhaps what we ought to do is instead of deciding what to put in here, determine if there's anything we should take out, and we'll just send it as it sits unless there's something that's just irrelevant.
well, I think Mike makes a good point.
I
mean,
agree
we-
with you. I
We
agree
could,
with
we
you.
could just go through, have Ridge go through this and change the wording on, instead of, right now that they have restored VLT aid and they've restored the 20% holdback, but we could put
Bring it-
something in those saying, look, in the past, they've attempted to, take our VLT aid, they've attempted to, for 20%, and we're opposed to it from the beginning, or,
Yeah.
I mean, I think we need to make a strong stand ahead of time before they even start putting their budget together, that we're not going to stand for that anymore.
Then perhaps the better approach, and I agree with you, I think perhaps maybe the better approach is simply to have our legislative agenda from 2021 simply reworded to apply to
Yeah.
2022.
Sure.
Does that work for everybody else?
I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Preston, are
to-
you
to
okay
show
with
our
that?
Concerns beforehand, before the budget gets put together.
Preston, are you okay with that approach?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I don't see, I'm just looking here. I don't see anything that can't be reworded for the same purpose. On the federal level, we had airport improvement funding. We always need airport money. COVID relief funds for municipalities.
I think one thing we should talk about putting in our state part though is, the state got a bunch of this stimulus money also for basically infrastructure, and we should force their hand to use some of that for some of this broadband infrastructure too.
We have that down as,
And in the federal, I see we have it for the federal.
I think we could just
But there's
reword
nothing
that.
in the state to, let's hold their feet to the fire, and they've got all this funding that's supposed to be used for things. Let's make them, update their mapping at the very least. So that when the FCC starts doling out some of this money, we got all our ducks in a row to get some of it. I think that we need to put some pressure on the state to do that.
Then I think we could take item number 3 from the federal legislation and simply reword it, put it as item number 12 and add the mapping.
Sure, but we still,
Leave it at
the
13.
the
leave it-
federal funding is there for, it, but
Leave it there in the federal, but then take virtually the same language with adding
I think it's
accurate,
important.
up-to-date mapping.
I think it's important. We've got to make sure that they know we're keeping our eye on how they're spending those stimulus funds.
If for nothing else, they can do the map, the state can handle the mapping of it.
As they should.
That's a bonus to us, in my opinion.
I think that's fine. Okay. And everybody's picking up the gist of this so we can have it reworded. This will go to law and finance,
I think,
I believe.
Dean,
Okay.
that's a good idea, but I think in the grand scheme of things, I think the county's wise to do a lot of the mapping on their own to make sure it's done right. The state is I think the state is
To
gonna take a
under-
lot of the shortcuts that the FCC has in some of their census blocks, and
Why don't we request that the state supply funding for
that's
the
fine.
counties to do the mapping?
That's fine.
There you go.
I just think I think the counties need to at least have some kind of oversight on these mapping to make sure that they're correct.
I think they have to be done local, and I think not just at the county level. You and I sat through some of these conversations at NISAC. It's also very often needs to be done at the local level. Maybe the county.
That's why
overseeing-
we can't trust the state to do it.
Oh, no, I agree. No, I think we can trust the state to pay for it or pay a portion of the cost of it.
It's fine.
Maybe possibly match, I don't know that I want to say it publicly per se, but match some state funding with local funding.
Well, let's
And
not,
get
let's
some-
not say that to
No,
the
I
state.
said,
Let's request they pay
But,
for the whole thing.
no, they pay for the whole thing, and we will oversee it and administer it. Okay, if we do those things, then we would have 12 items under the state, we would have 3 items under the federal. The,
So
NISAC
just for record keeping for number 12, we're going to ask for provide funding for broadband mapping at the county level.
Mapping and infrastructure. I wouldn't just limit it to mapping. I mean,
Yeah.
let's make them
Okay.
spend some of their money there instead of, we don't want to make them think that we're going to be happy just with mapping. We're going to need more than just mapping money. We're going to need some infrastructure money too. So let's keep your feet to the fire on that.
Until we see what the mapping results are, we don't even know what's
That's right.
needed.
That's right. But
So we very
I don't
well
want to
may.
let them off the hook to say, here's your maps. Do what you want with them. That's all. I don't want.
No, I agree with you. And I think, quite honestly, that when we get into the Adirondack area where there's long stretches where there's no reason that to even have infrastructure, that's where we need the state's assistance financially because it's their land that's blocking us from being able to have enough people per mile or
Their
whatever.
lands and their policies are blocking.
And their,
It's not just-
well, their policies too, yes. Under the NICE resolutions, there are 5. One is to increase in fully fund county law 18B, which is the assigned council pay rates. Number 2 is calling on the governor to complete the Affordable Care Act, enhance Medicaid assistance percentage reconciliations, and pay us what they owe us. And these are the priorities coming out of NICEX, so they will be pushing these as well. Number 3 is allocating unrestricted resources to the local health departments to fortify provision of core health public services. We need anything that has to do with putting money in our county to help with public health services because we are going to be spending a very lot of money to do what is in fact almost an unfunded mandate since they're making us become a public health department. And number 4 is calling on the governor and legislature to suspend any further state diversion of local sales tax for distressed health facilities. And it's sunset the law immediately. Those are I thought there were 5, there are 4. Those are the 4 coming out of NICEAC. So if everybody's comfortable with asking Rich, did I see Rich come in or did he come in
Yeah.
and leave?
I think he had to leave. He's got something going on. So just to make sure, Madam Chair, we're on your wavelength here in the committee. We will update the language of our 2021 based on the conversations we had, especially on the infrastructure and mapping. Request for funding on broadband, add that as item 12. Tweak some of the language on some of the other ones. Instead of restore, it'll probably be maintain, the funding.
Make them current.
Yeah, exactly. And you would want this ready for law and finance? Is that the?
I don't think that the legislature is not even going to be back in session till first of the year.
I
probably, so.
think that we want to, if we can have it ready either for, I think with the new timelines, the way they are, it's complicated. Maybe not the next law and finance because it's probably due yesterday,
Okay,
but the next one after that, and then once it's approved that would probably be
November.
October, it would be November.
okay.
Once it's approved in November, get a copy of it to our legislators so that they can do their behind the scenes and their staff behind the scenes checking on what's going into the budget.
Gene, should we include something on the 911 funding that the counties are getting screwed on that 911 funding? I mean, they're collecting $200 million a year and the counties are getting like a 10% of that back for 911, that people, if nothing else, we can talk to the legislator about it. They're probably not, but maybe we just need the public to know how bad the counties are getting. I mean, the public's the ones paying this bill on their 911, on
Their surcharge.
their surcharge on their bills for 911, and the state's putting the money in the general fund. I mean, and a lot of the public don't know that.
I certainly have no objection. We did not have it in our legislative agenda.
Well, I just think it's something there's money out there for the counties for this 911. It's earmarked money that the state has just been putting in their general fund for years and only giving the counties a small percentage of it. And I think it's wrong. And I think if the public knew that, maybe we can put some pressure on people to get some of that funding that's needed to
I think-
upgrade our 911 systems.
Well, and it certainly is needed and going to be more needed because as we increase the number of our population and people are moving into the area, there's more and more people.
I just think we should work that into our message here somewhere.
Is everybody okay with that?
And item number 13?
Yep.
Sure. Well, I mean, if I have no problem if Ridge and Steve go through this and they see something that's redundant and want to combine a couple, You know, let's,
That will, my next question after we finished with these was if they had anything else that they wanted to add to it that's come up since we've done this. And I certainly would leave it to your discretion to look through what's coming out, what you're hearing, what the scuttlebutt you get as county administrator, because I know you're in the loop on a lot of that stuff. And I have no objection to adding any of it because we can meet again, or we can just simply review it internally by email or, and have it go on to law and finance.
Great suggestion. We will get together with a bunch of us to, we hear different things and just see if there is something that would be appropriate to bring to your committee to add.
I don't even know that we need to have a committee meeting to add it because it's going to go through law and finance.
Well,
anyway.
Well, if we're
Send it
gonna
to you for
critique
review.
this, if it's gonna be edited and updated.
You'll see
You've
it.
got time to add things to it, and then at our next meeting, we finalize it.
Yeah,
I'm
the
good
only
with that.
problem is I want to make sure we get it to our legislators in a timely fashion. And
Well, we
our
can get
next
it-
meeting has been, I canceled the October meeting of this committee like a month ago because of other conflicts. Because I didn't see any reason to have a meeting in the end of October for November's board meeting because there's nobody there. There's no rush to have a meeting. You can have a meeting at the end of November and still get everything to them before they get back in January. So rather than having another committee meeting, which is going to draw it out to where if we had a committee meeting, and it's not, we couldn't have the committee meeting until the end of November, which would be for the December committee meeting. Follow that. That makes
What do you
sense?
wanna do?
I mean, if something controversial comes up, or if you want to add a bunch of stuff,
Well, we could certainly copy you and the committee
yeah,
members on everything and then,
absolutely.
get back to us with your comments, if that sounds okay.
And frankly, if you have a draft, I have no objection. If you want to copy all of the board of supervisors, and let them know. It's just, I'm sure I will get used to it, but it's hard to teach old dogs to do tricks. And I'm having trouble with this timing business of when you have to have a meeting and have stuff in and prior to a meeting. And I just think it's difficult sometimes. So
If I may?
absolutely.
Jump in.
It is.
Thank you. So just a couple of, one question I would have is, generally, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, this committee usually in March forwards a legislative agenda. Would this be how I'm conceptualizing it as an update or, a check-in on that legislative agenda or amendment thereto?
Because they requested us to give them, the legislative, our assemblymen and senators requested us to give them information prior to the budget coming out on what kinds of things we would want included or not included in the budget, so that because they work behind the scenes, they're doing the budget now. So their staffers, the people from the Association of Towns, the people from NISAC and NICOM are all working the back channels with the staff people on what's getting in and what's not getting in the budget. So
And
this
then-
is to accommodate them. So this is simply this would be our original 2021 spring legislative agenda updated to now or a month from now.
And then with respect to resolution passing, I think that I would suggest one of two ways. One is if this committee is willing to approve this in principle and forward it to Law and Finance, subject to editorial revisions on specific language as chairperson, or with the relaxing of the open meetings law or the new legislation regarding phone, perhaps circulating a draft and meetings, I think, can be called in much quicker fashion to have
We
another.
could do that, whichever way works.
So I would defer on what you would approve.
And a lot of this stuff that's in this agenda is not new. It's been approved and approved and approved month after year after year. So it's not like we've come up with some innovative something new.
So if I could offer to come up with a draft in conjunction with Steve's office and circulate it, and then perhaps enlist Teresa's assistance in calling a special meeting of this committee to forward that resolution to Law and Finance.
Does that work for everybody?
that's fine.
Preston?
Yeah, that works.
Okay. Okay, very good.
Is on the list.
And we could, if something doesn't work out, we can change it. It's just that this time of year, for most of us, this is a very busy time of year with town budgets and other kinds of things going on and trying to figure out where we are from day to day with COVID. Meetings are difficult, so if we can do it virtually, that's even better.
And if I may, one more comment that you indicated issues that are hot button issues. In working with Mike Naughton extensively on solar projects and pilot projects, one thing I would offer out there is the legislation on local control over those projects is being pulled away very, very rapidly. And
That's a
I would
good
ask
call.
that to
And both the
be-
Association of Towns and NISAC and probably NICOM, I don't know, are all over that. And
big
that
issue.
could be something that if you want to take the time, or I will, to pull the resolutions from NISAC and December, the Association of Towns resolutions will be approved. And I think they were approved last year the same way with the whole home rule issue. We can certainly direct that those kinds of resolutions on solar go directly from your office. I think we can anyway, directly to Law and Finance for support, because they're supported by our organizations that we're members of. And do you remember off the top of your head what came out of NISAC
The resolution, I have,
on solar?
they had a resolution, I don't know what, it's in the packet, I believe.
Yeah, I just don't have it with me. But, and there were a number, like 80 pages of resolutions that came out of NISAC. And I think we sent back. Did you take them back?
Take it back, I've got it at home.
Somebody brought them back to you.
Yeah, we got a copy.
Oh, it was Ridge, I think, brought them
Yeah,
back. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could check and see on what they have in solar. This has been a big thing because it has to do with the idea that if towns can't act fast enough, that after, I think, 60 days, they're deemed automatically approved and
Correct. And for bigger projects, the bigger the project, there are some situations where there's no local planning authority to object to it, which
which
I
applies
believe
in the
would be
whole,
of very much interest to local town supervisors and county legislators.
Yeah,
in our
it applies
planning
in the-
department.
applies completely in the face of home rule in general. And again, we don't know specifically what the new governor's office, how they will react to this. Because she was a town legislator for, I think, 8 or 10 or 12 years before she became, then she was a deputy county clerk and then a county clerk and then a congresswoman. So she's got a huge background in the different levels of government and understands at least what it means to government. So, yeah, I think that something like that that's already been approved by either NISAC or the association, well, maybe not the Association of Towns, but NISAC at least, as our organization, and all the resolutions that you have that came back from NISAC were approved. And I know Mo was in on a lot of them, and I sit on the resolutions committee as well as the transportation committee. So they take a lot of time to go over those resolutions. They take days sometimes to figure out exactly what word comes first and what word comes second. So they're well done, but they could go directly to Law and Finance if we wanted to support them. Any other discussion on item 3? Item 4, we received and you have copies of a resolution from the city of Saratoga Springs regarding 2 a.m. bar closing time. They are asking that the county support their request to have all the bars in Saratoga County close at 2:00 a.m. Because apparently I'm not entirely sure why, but it has to be done by the county. And what I am suggesting is that we take a thorough look at this. I know, to my knowledge, it's been through the county twice, and twice the county has turned it down. It would seem to me that we need to find out, and I hate to do this because we just gave you a bunch of work to do, but you have other people upstairs too. I would like to see this committee get some information, first of all, on what the county has done in the past. I am aware of at least 2 times, and there may have been others before it. I'd also like to know where this came from. Is this legislation that came out of the legislature in Albany signed by the governor that says you have to do it that way? Is it something in the Constitution? Or is it something that state liquor authority just thought up as, hey, that'll be convenient for us? Because I think it would seem to me, and this is only my opinion, that it really ought to be another home rule decision. At a minimum, based on the size of the community or the number of establishments in a community or any community. If a community doesn't want their bars open past midnight, why does the whole county have to say, oh, no, we can't do that? You know, there are some very conservative communities in this state down in, I can think it's particular in Dutchess and to a certain extent, I think maybe it's Putnam County or parts of Rockland, and very conservative communities who maybe don't want a bar open at all. Maybe they don't want it open after 10 o'clock at night. And why should the entire county decide when it's open or closed? And I would like to think about maybe we could recommend some legislation or some changes in regulation that make it much more a home rule item where we don't have to all just jump in and decide how to do it. And especially right now with any kind of establishment, whether it's a bar or a restaurant, any kind of public establishment, they're barely surviving. You know, that extra hour or two of business could be the difference between life and death for a business.
Have we heard from any of the merchant associations on this? I can't believe there's any of the chambers or anybody that's in favor of this. Has anybody piped in on this at all?
I have heard nothing from anybody. I have a meeting, which I have no idea what it's about. It's just in general with, what's it now? Center for Economic Growth, whatever it used to be, the Southern Saratoga Chamber. Probably next week or the week after. Maybe that's one of the items he wants to talk about. Although he didn't say why, he just said he wanted to come up and meet with me. What I do know is that both times that I was on this board and it was brought up to this board in a similar fashion, it was soundly defeated. So it may be that there is a feeling that they don't have to communicate with us. But on the other hand, I would like to have more information. I think that there's a number of you that are new on this. I think, Mike, you weren't here for either of those times. Mo, you were here for one of them. I don't know if Preston was. I think it's time, and we've got a lot of new board members who should be aware of the information. Nothing is going to change between now and January. So we get time to gather information, be clear. I think the problem goes away right after Labor Day anyway, that they're having. So let's get some real information and see if we can't find a way that respects their wishes, but maybe doesn't have to tie the entire county into making the decision.
In my opinion, bail reform would do better than to take care of this problem than close the bars at 2:00 in the morning. But
Maybe we
I
can
guess that's just my opinion at this point.
maybe we can combine both recommendations. Just a little bail reform would go a long way. But if you don't mind, I would appreciate it.
I'd be happy to. Inquiry as to format, do you want that as the legal process, the historical process, both? Is it intended to be for public consumption? Or do you want that to members of the committee? And
Oh, I don't
the
care if
board?
it's for public consumption. I think
Excellent.
public information.
So
If we're
I'll word
putting
it in
together,
a
there's no reason not to
non-attorney
share it.
client privilege manner as just a informational.
If you come
Roll out.
across something that should be attorney-client privilege, put it in a separate memo, but I
Will
can't,
do.
I can't think of anything that would have any bearing on that. I just am more curious as to the history of how it got here. I mean, a lot of these laws on liquor consumption, I don't even know. I know when I had a business, you couldn't sell beer before 8 o'clock in the morning. I don't know if that's still the case.
Oh, yeah.
That is the case.
Yeah.
Could
There's
not
a
sell beer.
4-hour window,
From 4
5
a.m.
hours on
Yeah.
Sundays.
Tell her you tied up with me. Yeah. County administrator has to leave for a phone call with the governor. So decided, I guess, that we're not as important as the governor. But, they used to not be able to sell alcohol, beer before noon on Sunday. I don't know if that's still the law.
It's 9 o'clock on Sundays
9 o'clock.
in Saratoga County.
Well,
Is that
the
something we
resolution that they,
decide?
the
Pardon?
resolution that they did says 10 o'clock.
Is it 10 o'clock? It's
Okay.
a bigger window of time that you can't on Sundays.
I just have no idea, like, how these rules, I mean, these
You're
rules
right,
came
10
about from when there was no alcohol allowed during prohibition, and it's almost like a loosening of the laws. And I'm not sure I understand why we're trying to tell businesses how to operate. Maybe you have a business where everybody works and,
Did you read the?
it goes to church on Saturday and
I would be happy to. I know that
if we need to do.
Mr. Dorsey did a lot of work on this the last time it came through, so I'll pull all his files and do a new rundown in a publicly consumable format.
And if you have any
Oh.
reason to need to go and look at establishments across the county at different times, I think that's a reasonable thing that you could do. Maybe take a board member or two along with you that wants to observe the process. Take a field trip. Yeah, we've been going to field trips to see records management. Certainly you could do field trips for that. Anything else anybody wants to add to the 2:00 bar closing time? Any other business to come before this committee? Motion to adjourn by
Second.
Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Wright. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.